In the early days as a collector, which was the most memorable days of my life, I started collecting at the age of 18. That was the period whereby I was thirsty for the knowledge for pertaining to Keris. I went reading, went to the library, tried to meet up people, and back then at a young age, you are somewhat limited by funds. So I had to limit myself and accept the fact that this is a hobby that requires quite a significant sum of investment. There are numerous reasons as to why I would like to become a collector back then. Number one, yes, through associations with several other collector friends and seeing their collectors, I have to admit the little sense of envy crept in, and I told myself that one day I would love to have a collection as sizable as theirs. And that was one of the motivators for me to gather as much knowledge and as much material specimens as I could at that time. My inspiration has always been one of my close friends and mentor, the late Muhammad Din Muhammad, a Singaporean-born artist, painter, traditional healer. He has quite a significant collection of Kerises in his possession throughout the years. And I was fortunate that he imparted some of his knowledge, or most of his knowledge, through books and his personal experience to me, which I applied over the years. And this has been very helpful for me to identify and select pieces that are actually of value rather than just by the fact that it's a Keris. Since collecting in 2000, my collection grew from 1 to about 457 pieces today. But of these 457 Kerises, only about 300 I would say has some historical value. The rest are mostly made up of Kerises that appears to look like a Keris, but actually cannot be classified as a Keris because of its form and function. The most expensive I invested on, I would say, is my personal commission Keris. It was placed for custom commission back in 2008 and only completed fully in 2011. For that, I spent an equivalent to about 35,000 ringgit. And if my memory serves me correctly, exchange rate at that time in 2011 was about by half. So if you were to divide it by 2, you would get is around ballpark figure around 15 to 16,000 Sing dollars. For me, a good Keris I will define by 3 factors. Firstly, I will look at the material. What the material that has been used into making the Keris will dictate whether a piece is genuinely good or just another tourist kind of a piece, or something that is totally of no value. Material in the sense of, for example, the fittings, which is the hilt and the sheath. If the material is made of ivory or sea ivory or even exotic materials like rhino horn, yes, this would actually increase the value of the existing piece. Secondly, I will look at the form. As I mentioned, a Keris is generally identifiable by region, and each region will have its own stylistic form. In a way, this will assist a collector to generalize a specific era or even area where the piece may have originated from. So the form, when we compare it quantitatively from other specimens, is something that is distinguishable, because a newly made piece can never adopt or rather have an exact form of an antique piece. And thirdly, the execution, meaning to say how it was made overall. For me specifically, when I mention execution, I would refer to the blade itself. How the blade was forged, whether it is very well arranged and very well forged. This execution is itself an art form by the empu, or the Keris maker, or the smith. Because a poorly made Keris 200 years ago will still be a poorly made Keris now. To identify whether a good Keris, these are the 3 basic factors. If either one of these factors Keris fails to meet, then it cannot be defined as a good or bad Keris. The most memorable experience was having given the opportunity to introduce the Keris and some other Malay-related cultural artifacts to our Prime Minister, Mr. Lee Hsien Loong, at one of the events. at Jalan Kayu back in 2014. It's a humbling experience to see someone of his stature, a Prime Minister, being very interested in our arts. For me personally, I always like to go through the more human approach. Yes, in today's context, we have social media platforms. These for me are just tools for me to share to the world of me, essentially, and my collection. For me, I always have this understanding that a Keris typically is nothing compared without the collector himself. Without a collector, a Keris, it can end up in a museum, it can end up in a pawn shop, or worst case scenario, it can end up in a junkyard. Because when people do not understand and value what they have, there will always be some groups of people who appreciate it, and also there will be another group of people who want to know but they do not know what are the resources available. So for me, it started off as a simple social media platform, for example Facebook, just to share my collection. I would always advise the same thing to anyone who is interested to become a Keris collector, to start off a collection. Firstly, one should not be too eager and too rash to dive in, as in make acquisitions or purchases without the proper knowledge and understanding. It was also an honor and privilege for me to be the one personally addressing Prime Minister Lee during his visit, and also to address his entourage with whatever queries they have on the items that we displayed. Other senior collectors, people whom I respect, people whom had shared their knowledge with me, and to see them taking a step back to give credence to the next generation, to have the opportunity to address and publicly speak with someone of authority, that is an indication or an acknowledgement that the senior collectors are looking out for young people to be the next generation.